So I'm very much about working with the right people for the right reason. I'm luckily at a place where I can do that now. It's I can say, no, thanks anyway, I'm too busy, right? Or no, I'm not going to come back. And I
Yeah.
do that in a professional manner, but I think that's probably how I manage the motivation because if I'm working on with the right people, doing the right things, the motivation takes care of itself.
Welcome to Mastering the Numbers. I'm your host, Joe Mallo. Really excited for my guest today, Ned Parks. He is the founder of Aegis 360 Consulting. Ned, thanks for taking part in my interview series.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. This is fun. I always enjoy doing these.
Yeah, they can definitely be fun. Hey, to get it started, how about if you tell the audience a little bit about Aegis 360?
Sure. Well, we're celebrating as of this year. It's an easy to count 25 years in business, so you know what year I started. We were going to have a big party in for the 20th, but something happened that kind of killed parties, so we didn't have one then. But we specialize in really three key areas, and it's connecting leadership, culture, and strategy. So a lot of leadership development training. We use a lot of business simulations to do that. And then on the culture side, we work with teams, some in a coaching environment, and some just work with the teams in totality, working them through problems or whatever. And then we do a lot of strategic planning with our own strategic planning process. So
What was your background before starting your own company?
yeah, so I started my professional world. Well, in another life, I started as a policeman, but that didn't last long because what I really wanted to do was fly aircraft in the military. So shortly after I went through the police academy and worked in the police department for a little while, finally got accepted to warrant officer flight school in the Army flying helicopters, and so I took off to that, and I never looked back, and it was the best experience of my life. So I learned a lot. The Army is and all the military services are very, very good, especially going through officer school of giving you the opportunity to lead the group, and we rotated that through in our flight and you get feedback from the people you're leading. Of course, you turn around and give them feedback when it's their turn, and then from our advisors and whatnot, and then being in a unit and so on and so forth. So I really kind of fell in love with that, and I lucked out having some really good people to work for. When I came out off of active duty, I went in a reserve unit and then started my own aviation business, which I had for quite a few years with three locations. One of them ran 24/7, had quite a few employees, and then sold those and went to work for another firm that actually had been a competitor, and they kind of hired me away from my own business, and then I started this consulting practice in 2000. So that's the short story.
I like it. We'll have to get into that more at another time. But
Sure.
what prompted you to start the consulting business?
I have born and raised with an entrepreneurial spirit. My mother was a real estate agent and worked 7 days a week, and I just didn't know anything else. That's how I was raised. My dad was either owning a business or running a business, or the last 25 years that he worked, he was a real estate appraiser on his own, working out of the house. So it's just something I grew up doing and always just had that desire to do it. And I see an opportunity, I like to start it. So when I worked for my last job, I finally sat down with a career conversation with the owner and said, I really think I want to go into business for myself. And being an incredibly enlightened leader, he said, how do we help you do that? Which is a lesson all into itself.
Yeah,
So,
I think so. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome over the last 25 years?
well, for the first 4 or 5 years, starving half to death. But that's kind of goes with the territory. um, I think that probably the biggest, Joe, is recognizing, not chasing after the next new thing, but recognizing when the next new thing is the next new thing and it fits in your business and you need to grab a hold of it, not just chase after them. Really trying to understand the difference between a fad and something that's sustainable. I think that's was highly important. I wish that I had I kind of developed and learned and pulled together some things. In fact, I've got them in front of my on my wall up here. Turning panic into opportunity is always step number one. So when something bad befalls you, what's the opportunity that I have here? Protect your brand at all costs, no matter what. Don't damage the brand, whatever you do. Improve or enhance your digital footprint, and that's something I've been trying to do since day one. And as you know, digital world has changed over 25 years. And then only
Yeah.
build what is sustainable. So even in the face of panic or a pivot or a change, if you build something that is temporary, you better understand it's temporary and it's got a short life for a very, very specific reason. Don't build something temporary thinking it is sustainable because you've just spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money on something that's going to give you a very short payback. And you could have been doing something else in that regard. So those are kind of my four mantras. I wish I'd known them a lot earlier, but that's how
Yeah.
you learn them, right? Is going through things. So,
Yeah, you have to go through the tough times first to learn that.
well, sure,
Uh,
absolutely. The best PhD in the world is the one of hard knocks. So,
That's right. That's right. In growing your business over the last 25 years, is there anything you would have done differently?
um, I think so. I think probably I would have worked harder earlier on to have a lot more clients that I had a lot more sustainability with. Early on, I had a lot of clients that were one and dones, and that becomes very, very costly. And probably for the past I would guess 15 years, maybe, probably 10 years in. I woke up one morning and I went, this is ridiculous. Every time I turn around, I got to make a new sale. And it's a lot easier to make a sale to somebody you've already done business with than to try to make a sale to somebody that doesn't know who you are. So you know, we changed a lot of our delivery techniques just to do that. I went from full day training events. We still do full day training events, but I embraced half day training events. Clients were asking for them. I was pushing back. Finally, I did that. But what happened was I would then end up over a 3 week time period being in their offices 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times and developing a relationship instead of being there once and not developing a relationship.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we changed over the years that have really paid off. And then I had a lot of businesses that have done a great job of partnering with other companies. So that's both been good and bad because they had the relationship I didn't. And, as they have, some of those other companies have faltered, I now have to go back and build those relationships with people that I had worked with through or in concert with someone else. So, not that that was bad business, it was great, but it also made me a little lazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's. I agree. One of the best things for all of us to do is to not have such a transactional business, right?
Right, right,
Long-term relationships are key. Some businesses are transactional by nature, and then some aren't. It just depends,
correct.
I guess, where you're at. So, what are some common misconceptions you hear from friends or other people you talk to about being a business owner?
Gee, you have a lot of time off. Um, the boss can give you whatever they want. That's always a fun one. I tell people we only work a half a day. Which 12 hours is the question that we need to answer, the first 12 or the second 12. You don't really, I don't anyway, and most entrepreneurs I know, it's not a question of, unplug and leave it behind. It's a question of how are you going to balance taking it with you. That's the reality check right there is, are you going to work on Sunday? Well, yeah, everybody does. So I don't have the kind of job, nor do you, that where I can just not do something on a Sunday. First of all of us as entrepreneurs are fairly well driven, and we don't sit around and do nothing very well, no matter what. So yeah, it's that's I guess the biggest misconception. And then in our world, it's what is it you really do? I mean, trying to explain that to somebody is always pretty
I
hard.
get that. I get
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
100%.
I can't tell you how many times I walk by my office on a Sunday and look at the door and say, you know what, I think there is something I need to do. And
Yeah,
I
of
just
course,
find
absolutely.
myself wandering in there and spending a few hours. So it happens all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so to kind of elaborate on what you said a little bit more. How do you find some sort of balance between your personal and your professional life? Is that even possible? Is it something you even strive for?
Sure, start another business. Which I'm half joking and half telling you an absolute truth. I tend to think that I don't like at all work-life balance as a goal, and the reason I don't like it is because balance, the word balance gives us the view of a scale, and a scale is balanced, and I think that's an impossibility. Um,
Right.
no matter whether I'm a W-2 employee working for a major company or I'm own my own business. I do, however, like the concept of work-life harmony because what's harmonious for me may not be harmonious for you. You may have the kind of business that it's easier for you to turn it off. Your clients don't have Saturday and Sunday demands, or you don't have a early morning project to drop on somebody's lap. Different businesses are different things. So the harmony is the word I'd much rather have because what's harmonious for you may not be so for me. And once I kind of figured that out, it's like, okay, the real question is, am I happy doing what I'm doing in the moment that I'm in? Am I wishing that I was going to the bar with my buddies to watch a football team that loses every Sunday? Um, and and sometimes I carve.
I wonder what team's that.
Yeah,
I wonder
I
who you're
don't
talking
know.
about.
Since we're both from Northeast Ohio, we'll let everybody figure that out on their own.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, we do. I think it's important that we actively carve time out for that. But the amount that I carve out may be different than anybody else, and we just all have to appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Balance isn't always 50-50. In fact, it rarely, if ever, is. I mean,
Right. Right.
sometimes the perfect balance is a 90-10 for people.
Sure.
Sometimes it's a
Absolutely.
60-40. Just
Yep.
depends. So,
Yep.
so how do you, with everything that you have going on, how do you keep that motivation and that focus um, continuing day after day?
Um, that's a great question because I don't, it's not something I really think about. Part of it is being being the boss and having our own companies. We do have the option, especially when we get sustained, and certainly at this point in your and my career, we're sustained. There are projects and customers I can say no to because I find that the wrong customer or the wrong project can be very draining. It's not the quantity of the work that is draining or that I need to motivate to go back and do the work. It's many times I can't stand that person. I don't want to work with them. They don't have the ethics that I do. They don't treat their employees and they don't want to, whatever. Or the project's just a lousy project. It doesn't pay enough and I'm putting more into it, or the client doesn't appreciate it, or they're sticking their nose in the way, or whatever the case may be. So I'm very much about working with the right people for the right reason. I'm luckily at a place where I can do that now. It's I can say no, thanks anyway. I'm too busy, right? Or no, I'm not going to come back. And I
Yeah.
do that in a professional manner, but I think that's probably how I manage the motivation because if I'm working on with the right people, doing the right things, the motivation takes care of itself.
Yeah. I mean, if you're working with the right people, it becomes fun. It's
Right.
not,
It does. Yeah.
it's not even working. I think when you brand new at starting a business and you're your first 3 months, 6 months, you might take on a client that you wouldn't necessarily take on 25 years later,
Correct.
or even 5 years later.
Well, and not only take on the client, but take on the project. I mean, it may be
Right.
a great client and the project is not in your wheelhouse. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, you might deliver an okay product to them, but you didn't do as good as you should have done. And it was all right, but it wasn't great. And you never really feel good about it. And you think back, you go, man, I shouldn't have done that. So I try to be a little more picky on that now.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. How do you differentiate yourself from other consultants that are out there that might do something similar to you?
Yeah. Um, well, I think the relationship with the client is a huge piece to this for sure. That's number one. Um, but you bring up other other consultants and coaches or whatever that do things similar to me, and that brings up the word competition. And here's what I will tell you. I if you're going to play in my sandbox and compete with me, I don't have a problem with that. provided one thing. You're really, really, really good at what you do. Don't destroy our profession by being bad at what you do. Because if you're bad at what you do, I'll never get them for a client. It makes it 10 times harder. They go, you people in your business, I mean, just ask how many people want to go buy a used car or,
Right.
right? It's just
Yeah.
the guy or the gal that has a great, car lot and they really perform at a high level, is always battling that. And so I just say, please do what you do and do it really well and do what you're good at. Please don't do everything under the sun. I get it, you're starving, but you gotta have a focus there, and then that's fine. I just had breakfast back before Christmas with somebody I've known for 20 plus years. Yeah, at least maybe the full 25, and we've battled, done. She's called me up, said, "Hey, you won that contract. Good for you." We've always been very friendly competitors. Man, we just had a long lunch, and my golly, we're gonna do all kinds of business together. I was just on a
Yeah.
Zoom call with him yesterday, introduce him to something different. So I try to get pretty close to people that are in my business and understand them.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I can send business their way. If it doesn't meet me, I'm fine doing that. If they're really good at what they do, that's
Yeah.
the key for me.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
So I agree. What do you for someone that's thinking about becoming a consultant or a coach? What do you think's the most challenging part of our industry?
It's funny. I never turn somebody down for coffee that is trying to go that route, because I had a lot of questions and, not everybody was willing to have coffee with you. So I try to always have coffee with somebody. And the one thing I'll tell them is there is no shortage of people that want to sell you a certification for something. And be very, very cautious about that. If you can't run some part of your business on your own 2 feet, I don't know that a certification is going to help you any. And the more I get into it, the less of them I want. So it had better really offer me something pretty substantial to add to the business before I go down that road. So I tell everybody, be very careful about buying certifications or buying some sort of something that gets letters after your name. I don't know. Yeah, you'll get a few people, clearly. I've never gotten certified in a certain training brand out there. They built a nice product. I've just never done it. I've had one client in 25 years say, "Oh no, we need that." A couple of years later, they ended up hiring me for something else, and I asked them about it, and they go, "Yeah, I guess that wasn't all it was cracked up to be." So I certainly haven't lost much business as a result of it. So I've never really worried about that. But I tell everybody, be careful how much checks you write to get some sort of certification. If it really is going to fit in your business just fine, that's great. But make sure the product is going to enhance it. Don't think that that certification or that product is going to be it. Because
Yeah.
if you can't run on your own 2 feet somebody in the consulting world, you're not going to run on anybody else's feet either.
Yeah, exactly. I always looked at it as you're buying a vision of experience.
Right.
So,
Right.
you pay for the class, you pay $500 for the class, you get the initials, and now everybody thinks that you're experienced. And
Right.
that's just not the case. It's
Yeah,
just not the
unless
case.
unless it's something that's really gonna, a friend of mine got his certification as a forensic accountant. Well, that's different, right? I
Right.
mean, he might have to sit in court, and if he doesn't have that, he's not going to be able to be an
Yeah,
expert witness. That's what he wants to do. But most of us in our world, that's not the case.
exactly. So, where do you see your business in the next 12 to 36 months after 25 years?
Right. Well, I'd like to tell you I'm still going to be sitting here in this chair. So I see that. I We've got some strategies out there. I'd like to see us. We've gone very deep into the training modality of simulations, and so we're both using existing simulations from a company we do business with, as well as build our own when they don't have a solution. Um, I I I see us doing a lot more of that and a lot more as strategic planning, which we've done a lot of. Um, Growing with people, sure. If it fits, I mean, if it makes the right sense, then the answer is yes. Um, do I see us reinventing the wheel? I don't know about that. I do know that we'll always embrace technology and digital, because if we don't, someone else will. And our clients expect us to now. They just do. And if we don't do it, they're just going to go, yeah, okay, well, I don't know who you are anymore. And so we have to, no matter how old we are, we like it or don't like it, you just have to embrace it and understand it better. And embracing it, by the way, Joe, maybe we learn it, it may be we hire it done for us. But, so embracing doesn't always mean I'm going to learn how to do it. It
Right.
may mean I'm going to hire somebody to do it for me and with me. But that's still an embracing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, for sure. So, last two questions, just a little bit of a different
Sure.
direction. What's the best business advice anybody's ever given you over the years?
Um, a guy said to me one time back when I had my aviation businesses, I was complaining to him. He was a client, had his corporate airplane with us, and we were talking, and I was complaining about an employee or something. And he said, "Well, the problem, Ned, is you're hiring your demands of who you're hiring are too high." And I was like, "Wait a minute, you're like own companies all over the country. You're known to be a taskmaster to work for. How can that something is amiss here?" And he just laughed at me and he said, "When you're looking to fill a position, make the list of the 100% of what you want that position to be able to do from a skill set and a character set. And then take the 20% out you can do without, and then hire to that 80% that's left. You'll rarely be disappointed." And that was really an eye opener for me. That was just
Hmm.
astounding. And he went on to say, he said, there is no perfect person, and you can't design one and expect to hire him. So you design the perfect person in the job, then you go hire, and then you're highly disappointed that they're not many. Well, because no one ever is. He said, if you hire the 80%, you absolutely positively have to have. Now, the 20% somebody next to him might have to fill. That's fine. Then that goes into their 80%, and something comes out of their 20% that they don't need. And I have found that really has been quite helpful. I had a client struggling to hire, and she was trying to get the team on board with somebody, and they were all complaining, "Look, this guy's just looking for this job to move back to the area. He's probably not going to be with us for 3 years." And so they were looking to me in a meeting and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I said, can 3 years of service from this guy give you what you need before you move on to the next person?" And they all kind of went, "Yeah." And I go, "Then why are we having this conversation?" So they took out that piece of a 20-year employee, right? And they said 3 years, if he stays, great. If he leaves after 3 years, well, he left in 3 years and 6 months. And by the way, the internal person that they were said just needs a little more experience before we give him that job, had now been coached up to do that job and is in it right now.
Yeah.
So you've got to change your expectations with what's available, and not just in hiring people, getting people to do what they're doing. That was some of the best advice I've ever heard, and I've passed that on to a lot of people.
Yeah. Thanks for passing it on to us as well. I like that. So, final question for you, and I'll let you go.
Sure.
Let's say you run into a business owner, been around for a year or two. They're struggling. They're stressed. Things aren't going the way that they thought they would at this point. What kind of advice would you give them?
Um, I think I would probably give them the advice of, if they're really struggling and they're frustrated about it, they probably either don't have a clear expectation of themselves and what their KPIs are to get where they want to be, or they've got them too big and too short of a time period, and they may need to refocus on that a little bit and rethink that. The other thing I find is people sometimes they miss the opportunity right in front of them because it doesn't look the way they think it should. And so I would encourage them to go back and think about what other opportunities are sitting there in front of you that you need to grab a hold of. That's probably the two pieces of advice I give them.
Yeah, great. But listen, I really appreciate you taking part in my interview series. It was great to learn more about you and what Aegis 360 does. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do it?
Sure, they can go to our website, which is www.a360c.com, or ned at a360c.com. Pretty simple. I'm not a hard guy to find on the internet, so believe me, there's not too many Ned Parkses, and there's not too many Aegis 360s. So even if they've forgotten, just Google that, they'll probably find us.
Well, good. Well, hopefully everybody reaches out to you. Ned, once again, thank you very much for taking part. Everybody out there listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mastering the Numbers. We'll catch you the next time around. Take care, Ned.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Joe.
You've just tuned into another episode of Mastering the Numbers. We hope you found valuable insight to boost your financial success. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Keep pushing forward, and thanks for listening.